What first comes to your mind when you hear magical girl? No doubt, many of you imagine the iconic character Sailor Moon with her signature Odango hairstyle and catchphrase. Perhaps you recall another royalty of the genre, Cardcaptor Sakura. Or maybe you are a fan of Madoka Magica and the gory exploration of what it's like being a magical girl in the horror genre. Not a lot of you will think of the newest pilot animatic released on YouTube by Kiana Kansmith, titled Pretty Pretty Please, I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl. While the pilot in itself is a nice piece of media, it ultimately relies heavily on the self-awareness of the magical girl genre tropes sprinkled with American high school experience. The pilot, however, marks an essential shift in the perception of the magical girl genre among modern audiences. One where being the magical girl is regarded as a job, not as a destiny. By acknowledging that part, Pretty Pretty Please, I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl becomes one of the most outspoken examples of the shift in the paradigm. And while it is done for an English-speaking audience, there are plenty of anime examples with a similar premise being made in Japan. The magical girl genre has always been closely tied to its audience, primarily focusing on young girls and teenagers. At its core, it's a coming-of-age story told through the female perspective and focusing on the struggles of growing up and dealing with problems such as school, friendship, and first love. Since its emergence in the 1960s, it quickly gained popularity and grew to have several subgenres, including the magical idol, magical girl warrior, and even magical girl phantom thief. The genre has been constructed, deconstructed, and reconstructed countless times, with hundreds of examples spawning across both Western and Eastern media. The times change, however, and magical girls don't stay the same. While Sailor Moon still speaks to millions of new and old fans alike, and her messages of friendship, courage, and beauty are universal, in many ways it is a product of its time. In this video, I will analyze the approach to being a magical girl from the perspective of its viewership and the connection to the fantasy that the magical girl genre provides. An important detail to mention: while Western media has excellent examples of the magical girl genre, the primary focus of this video will be on Japanese anime as the stronghold of Mahou Shoujo. If you want a separate video about the development of the Western magical girl genre, please write so in the comments. With that being said, let's delve into the vast and diverse world of Mahou Shoujo, starting with the ones who ultimately popularized the genre, magical girl warriors. Mahou Shoujo as a type of anime has its roots in Toei Studio productions from the 1960s and 1970s. It usually features girls aged 9 to 14 who suddenly get magical powers, sometimes because they are princesses from a magical world. The stories often show how they use their powers to help others while hiding their true identities. They frequently have magical items like wands and have small animal friends with them. In the 1980s, Studio Pierrot made essential contributions to the magical girl anime genre, changing how these shows were created. They introduced new ideas like idol girls, princess girls, and groups of magical girls. For a decade, the studio was a key player in the magical girls scene, setting the stage for the 1990s when magical girls anime became popular worldwide. As was said before, magical girl genre is a coming-of-age story that provides the audience with an empowerment fantasy done through the adventures of its protagonists. The classic magical girl warrior stories like Sailor Moon, Pretty Cure, Tokyo Meow Meow, and Cardcaptor Sakura usually tie the monster of the week types of enemies with the life lessons that the audiences need to learn, or just exciting episodes from the lives of the protagonists. What sets the classic and neoclassic stories apart from the rest representatives of the genre is how being the magical girl is treated. Usually, it is seen by the heroines as a gift, or as a destiny, or at least as a task that they should be honored to have. Even if the characters have their reservations at the start of the journey, They quickly become acquainted with their new powers and are ready to defeat the latest monster of the week in the next episode. That is not to say that being a magical girl is all sugar and sparkle. The girls have their fair share of obstacles and pain, sometimes surpassing the classic action hero genre by the amount of suffering and danger inflicted upon the magical girls. Of course, it all depends on the age restriction of the anime, and more often than not, the seriousness of the situation gets downplayed or not acknowledged by the characters. The classic magical girls go through their fair share of problems, often focusing on relationships with others, friendship and falling in love, as these are the topics essential for the target audience of the genre. These topics usually get paired with supernatural threats to tie the plotline together, but also to show how the characters overcome their obstacles with the power of magic and friendship. Magical girl anime glorifies the bond of female friendships and often empowers the audience by setting an example of the anime heroines overcoming their problems. These are the core ideas of the classical magical girls. They are happy to have their powers and take pride in what they do, despite their calling interfering with their personal lives. Magical girls understand the importance of their missions and the sacrifices they have to make in the name of a higher calling. They are rewarded for their selflessness by always saving the day and coming on top. But what if they can't save the day? What happens when the magical girl loses? If you're enjoying the video, please consider subscribing to my channel and leaving a like under this video. I would really appreciate that. With the start of a new millennium, the approach to magical girls gradually gains new perspectives. In fact, research suggests that the infamous Toei Studios' current magical girl shows are aimed at young girls ages 4 to 9 and also at men ages 19 to 30, with them holding events for the child fans and adult fans separately. As the anime industry uses new ways to share its products with specific audiences, the messages in these shows are becoming more mixed and unclear. Today's magical girl characters often send mixed messages, reflecting and trying to address different values in society. Madoka Magica is among the first and arguably the most prominent examples of the deconstructions of the magical girl genre. A cult classic, not too dissimilar to Sailor Moon, this anime tells the same story as Sailor Moon, but wraps it in a blanket of horror, gore and death. In Madoka's world, being a magical girl could be considered a blessing, since it grants you the power to fulfill your greatest desire. Madoka Magica appears to be a typical magical girl story at first. It follows Madoka, a young girl who, alongside her friends, dreams of an exciting life. She encounters Kyubey, a cute cat-like creature that offers to turn her into a magical girl in exchange for a wish. However, Madoka doesn't realize that becoming a magical girl comes with serious consequences. Unlike the innocent premise of Sailor Moon, the magical girls in Madoka Magica lose their humanity and become tools for someone else's purposes. Their main task is to enter the so-called witch labyrinths, which are dangerous and bizarre environments filled with monsters. They need to defeat the witches inside to restore their soul gem. If they fail to collect enough energy, they risk dying, but death means transforming into a witch themselves, trapping them in a cycle of violence. This system exploits their strong emotions as a resource for a group of overseers, the species called Kyubey. The struggle for survival among the magical girls is competitive and grim, promoting conflict over cooperation in a nightmarish world. In this story, bonds of friendship are constantly tested against the desire for survival, and the worst traits of humans are often mixed with the innocence of the main characters. In the world of Madoka Magica, becoming a magical girl is similar to putting a ticking bomb in your chest. This anime asks the question, what if this responsibility, this calling bestowed upon the schoolgirls, is not actually a gift? What if it's a curse that slowly drains life and joy out of you? The cute animal companions are not helpers, but jailers, observing your every step. There is no winning. Yes, you get your wish fulfilled, but there is no scenario where you turn back from being a magical girl and re-enter the time when you were innocent. The only way to go is forward, to be crushed by the weight of responsibility and lose who you are. The success of Madoka, much like Sailor Moon, created many works with similar premises. Magical Girls Raisin Project, Magical Girl Side, Daybreak Illusion, Magical Girl Spec Ops Asuka all go into the dark territory of violence and gore, sometimes creating violence just for the sake of shock value. The magical girls in these stories are still heroes protecting the innocent, but this burden is more than they can bear. Ultimately, they are children tricked into taking responsibility for things they could not possibly be prepared to overcome. The era of grim dark magical girl stories inspired by Magica and started at the beginning of 2010s, lasted through the past decade and still produces notable examples. Grimdark magical girls became a subgenre in itself. In recent years, however, a new trend of imagining magical girls has emerged, the one where being a magical girl is not a gift or a burden, it's a job. When a genre of a show exists for too long, eventually people get tired of classical concepts and seek something new. That's when the works of particular genres start referencing themselves or creating parodies poking fun at the classic tropes. It's nothing new and not limited to the magical girls. With magical girls, however, a curious phenomenon occurred. In recent times, the number of anime parodying the usual flaw of magical girl stories and concepts increased. It's not, however, malicious or belittling. Instead, those works focus on the core elements of magical girls and put a new spin on them by acknowledging the oddities with love. For instance, The Demon Girl Next Door is a comedy about a monster who has to slay a magical girl to end her family's curse, but ends up becoming friends instead. Gushing over magical girls, while not without its problems, is an interesting take on fan culture and magical girls being likened to idols in the world of this anime. Acrotrip does similar things, except it leans more towards subverting expectations and explores the nature of existing in a world of magical girls as a normal person. The most interesting for this video, however, are the titles where the main heroes become magical girls because they have to. In other words, it becomes sort of a job for them. For instance, a fresh title called Magi Lumiere Magical Girls Inc. is about a struggling college student taking a job at the Magical Girl Agency. This new wave of magical girls anime blends the boundary between the ordinary and supernatural lives of magical girls, making it feel more like a job that you simply have to do despite your feelings on the matter. You may like it, you may dislike it, but you can't simply leave. The modern magical girls have to make a constant effort to keep moving forward, and contrary to their classic predecessors like Sakura or Sailor Moon, the public image becomes as essential as doing heroic acts. In other words, the modern magical girls anime explores the themes that worry the contemporary audience, mainly finding a job, surviving adulthood, and creating your public image in a world where information flows freely and everyone can learn anything about you in a blink of a second. The new magical girls are less romanticized and often treat the problems of ordinary lives as more important than supernatural powers or defeating monsters. Magical girls is truly a genre that can accommodate works for every taste, from the classic heroic adventures of Sailor Moon to grimdark fantasies and workplace comedies. It proves time and time again that it is capable of adapting to the tastes of modern audiences without losing its core values. Of course, genres and subgenres don't come in a straightforward line. Even now, the many subgenres of magical girl exist simultaneously, ready to satisfy the tastes of very diverse audiences. In the 2020s, magical girls have seen an emergence of very differing works. An anime lover can watch the newest Pretty Cure, then go to the horrors of Magi Record and finish the day with the comedy of The Demon Girl Next Door or Acrotrip. The beauty of the magical girls in their current state is that we as an audience have a choice of what magical girl we want to be inspired by, whether it is Usagi's adventures of punishing criminals in the name of love and moon, or Madoka's endless self-sacrifice, or Kana Sakuragi's workdays in the Magical Girl agency, magical girls will continue to exist and develop with the viewers who choose to give them their hearts.